And welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Glad you're with us. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we're going to welcome Stacy McNeiland into the show.
Yes, Stacy is involved with the Oklahoma City Care Center, and the Care Center has a particularly important and difficult mission to carry out here in our community, dealing with abused and deprived children, among other things. Right after the determination has been made that the abuse happened, and they get debriefed or interviewed there at the Care Center by police and other folks that are trained to do such things in a setting that I think is just really effective to calm the child down and get the information that is so vitally needed. So the Care Center has a very unique role in Oklahoma City, a very important role, and we want to bring it to the viewers today. We haven't done it before, and we're glad to do it.
More attention on these issues than ever before. Let's get an update on how we're doing and also see how we all can get more involved and help. It's our subject today, the Care Center, right here on The Verdict.
I've always been a public servant. I've served either tribes, I've served the federal government, or I've served state governments. The law allows me to express my natural desire to advocate. My name is Stephanie Cochran. I am an attorney and I am Chickasaw. Lawyers give their clients, and in my case, tribal governments, a voice. And it's through legal decisions that tribes have been able to accomplish and to regain some much lost footing that they encountered in the late 1800s and the 1900s. When I reflect back on this time in history, I think I'll look at it in terms of opportunity. And I think now we have to turn those opportunities into long-term success for our future generations.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we are really pleased to welcome to the set of The Verdict Stacy McNeiland, the Chief Executive Officer of the Oklahoma City Care Center. Stacy did her undergraduate work at University of Central Oklahoma, got 2 master's degrees from Oklahoma City University, has long been involved in child abuse and prevention and assistance with victims of child abuse. She has been involved in Leadership Edmond, has many awards and activities in the community, none quite so important as her job with the Care Center. This is her first visit to The Verdict. We're sure glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you here. Let's just start at the basics.
Great.
What is the Care Center and why is it important?
Yeah, the Care Center is a child advocacy center. We are the only child advocacy center that serves Oklahoma County, and we're the largest advocacy center. We give children a voice. We allow them to come to the Care Center in a childlike setting. We're in a very homey, like grandma's house. It gives children the ability to relax and tell their story in a comfortable environment. We offer forensic interviews. That's really the heart of what we do. And that's a recorded interview so the child doesn't have to tell their story over and over. And that's used for prosecution to put the bad guys and gals in jail. We also offer medical exams, complete counseling services for their life if they need it, as well as advocacy services and other things of that sort. But we're a complete holistic center so the child can tell their story and then and then not have to relive it again.
Well, how did this evolve? When did we start to be more sensitive to the needs of the child and in the legal system?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because the Care Center was created out of us saying, there's got to be a way to do this better. We used to bring children in and interview them at a police station. If they said in the 70s and 80s, they said, I think my child has been abused, the first place that they went was the police station.
Sometimes in a police car.
That's right. Or on scene, which would be terrible. The abuse just occurred and then they're on scene. So they started to notice, hey, kids are recanting. They are not comfortable. They freeze up. They don't want to talk here. So mental health professionals and social workers said, there's got to be a better way. And thus the Care Center was created. A home-like environment focused on the child's needs. Children come first in everything that we do. And thus, the child is comfortable and able to tell their story.
What kind of professionals are on staff at the Care Center, or maybe I should ask it a different way, whom is it that does the interviewing of the children?
Right, we have forensic interviewers. There are only 35 forensic interviewers in Oklahoma that are trained to do what we do. So it's highly professional, and they receive lots of training, over a year of training before they can actually interview children. Our forensic interviewers are mainly social workers. They have masters in social work. We have a psychiatrist on staff. And this is their love, this is their passion, to work with children and get to the truth.
How many similar type organizations are there in the state, or does this represent the entire state?
We have 34 child advocacy centers. The Care Center and CAN up in Tulsa are the largest, for obvious reasons, the amount of county that we're dealing with. But there's also advocacy centers in Norman, in Stillwater, and even in the small necks of the woods. The focus being that if a child is abused in Alva, we don't want them to travel all the way to Oklahoma County in order just to receive services. So there's a child advocacy center in Alva.
About how many children on a monthly or annual basis would come to the Care Center?
Right. We do about 8 to 10 interviews a day.
Wow.
We're very busy, unfortunately. We serve about 3,500 children and families a year.
I was surprised. I knew a little bit about the Care Center before this show, but I was surprised to hear that not only do you do the initial interviews of the children very close in time to when the abuse took place,
right,
but they can continue to get services from
right.
you. I did not know about the continued services.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, the services are important, so we make sure the child is healing. The cornerstone of our work is a forensic interview so they can tell their story. But in order for long-term healing to be successful, they need counseling, okay? And so we're gonna provide, all of our services are free to all of our families, siblings, and children. And we have a partnership with North Care. They're a fantastic counseling agency in Oklahoma. They have 3 counselors on our campus. Our campus is a set of houses. We look like we're just in a little neighborhood. You'd never suspect that what we do. We're right in the medical district, right by Children's Hospital. So we also have medical exams. If it's a non-acute, if you've got a broken arm or something, you're going to go to Children's Hospital. But otherwise, all of our other medical exams take place at the Care Center. So counseling, medical exams. We also have advocacy, which is really important and customized to every single family. And what happens there is, one family may say, man, I'm having a difficulty finding food, putting food on the table for my family. So we're going to connect them with the Regional Food Bank, with the Hope Center, wherever they're at. We're going to connect them to the resources that they need the most.
Well, how do you interact with the legal system? This forensic interview is conducted. I assume it's transcribed, and so there's an audio and then an actual hard copy version. What happens to those documents and that recording next?
It's audio and video, so it's very technical and highly advanced equipment that we use to get audio and video. That's turned over to our district attorney, and based upon the case, they either will make the decision to file charges or the defendant will plead out, and many times the defendant will say, you know, I'm just going to take a plea deal because the interview is so much. It is so much information. So we work in tandem with what we call a multidisciplinary team. I've never seen collaboration more perfectly executed than at the care center. Medical professionals, our forensic interviewers, the district attorney's office, DHS, we all come to the table once a week, discuss all the cases, and it's amazing to see that in action, because a medical professional isn't going to see what a social worker sees. So it's important that we're all sitting down at the same table to bring justice for that child.
Now, if a child is abused, it can have, of course, ramifications from a criminal standpoint, and you've kind of talked about that already. But also it can have ramifications from a civil standpoint. For instance, the termination of parental rights might ultimately occur through activities of the court system and DHS.
Correct.
Are you involved in that aspect of it as well?
We are, to the extent that sometimes legal separations will happen right there, right then on campus, okay? So a child comes in, let's say with their parents. What they disclose in their interview, it has indicated that the parents may be involved in the abuse. If we feel like there's enough information and it's best for the child, we will separate right then, right there. That's with the assistance of police and DHS. And so while you've mentioned that, you touched on this earlier, we receive only classified cases. So
what's that mean?
What that means is if police and DHS have said, yes, there's abuse here, we need to investigate further, then the case comes to the care center. So we have lots of phone calls all the time. Grandma thinks son is being abused at daycare. What do I do? So we'll give grandma the appropriate tools to call DHS and make the claim.
Stacy McNeiland is the CEO at the Care Center. We'll be back with more after this.
People have been talking about energy independence for a long time. It's always been popular, but today it's possible.
We have an enormous supply of oil and gas in the United States, much more than we thought just a few years ago.
New technology, massive new discoveries, largely made by Oklahoma companies. It literally changes everything.
And Oklahoma is leading the charge. Go watch this video to see why. Energy independence starts with us.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to The Verdict. We are visiting with Stacy McNeiland on the Care Center. Ken?
Stacy, who is affected by the Care Center being there and its activities, and how are they affected?
Right. Okay, this is probably the most staggering statistic, but 1 in 3 little girls ages 2 to 17, and 1 in 5 little boys ages 2 to 17 will be abused in Oklahoma before their 18th birthday. More children are affected by child abuse than any other childhood infliction or disease. 1 in 10 kids have ADHD. 1 in 68 have autism. So if you let that sink in for a moment, you realize child abuse is an epidemic, and I'm certainly glad that the Care Center is there to provide services after the child is abused. But what I'm most excited about is our future. We're going to be partnering with other child abuse prevention organizations and talking about prevention, and now that Aaron's Law is now a law for the state of Oklahoma, introducing that into our public school system. Who is affected? Everyone is affected by child abuse. What people don't realize is that 90% of child abuse will happen with people that you know very, very well. The stranger danger thing that we were taught as we grew up, don't talk to strangers, that does happen, but 90% of child abuse occurs with people that you know and know very well.
We went through a highly publicized case, about a year ago with Adrian Peterson, the football player.
Yes.
Who I think admitted later that he had gone too far with his child, and then tried to explain that he was doing it in a manner that he had been accustomed to as growing up. And that's, I think having that as a, kind of an open conversation for our community is worth having. What are your views on that generational issue, and how, what might have been acceptable, 40 or 50 years ago is no longer deemed acceptable today?
That's a great question, because we received lots of calls after the Adrian Peterson case. People were legitimately confused, all right, thinking, I spank my kids, and I really don't know, am I doing harm here? So this is what I like to tell parents and foster parents, is that if a spanking is breaking skin, doing a lot of bruising, bleeding, anything of that nature, it is child abuse. Sometimes it may be necessary to give your child a whack to catch their attention. You don't want them running out in the road, something like that. But if it's doing all of those things that I mentioned, it's child abuse. In the case of Adrian Peterson, those were some of the factors. It went too far. We broke skin, we had to get stitches, there were lacerations, lots of bruising, went too far, okay? And I think that at this point too, he had admitted, I let my anger get the best of me. So the best thing to do if you're extremely angry, we'll walk away, all right? Many of us, especially where we grew up, spanking is not a lot of people experience that. I'm not gonna go as far as to say you should never touch your child, but if those things are occurring, it's going too far.
Well, and there's the psychological abuse that takes place, as well as the physical abuse. So how do you deal with that as a parent or grandparent?
Right. We deal with all types of abuse at the Care Center. The most prevalent form is sexual abuse, but we see a lot of physical abuse, sex trafficking, human trafficking, children being ignored, malnourished. So we deal with the whole complexity of abuse. Verbal abuse is one of those types. So we teach parents, we partner with other organizations like the Parent Promise and things of that sort, family builders, and if we feel necessary, we'll say, you need to take this class.
Do we have educational issues? Do some people just not know better?
Yes.
So what do we do about that?
Well, I'm most excited. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, Governor signed Aaron's Law, all right? Governor Fallin signed in Aaron's Law. That brings curriculum to public schools, and we're going to bring that to private schools, home schools, church groups, everybody statewide. That brings curriculum that says what's appropriate, proper touch, boundary issues. There's a program that is Stop, Go, Tell that teaches the child if somebody is touching you in the areas where a bathing suit would fall, stop, tell them to stop, and then go and tell someone that you trust. So yeah, there's an education problem. We think that our parents are telling their children these things. They're not. So it's our responsibility. You guys, we teach children fire safety, tornado safety, how to brush your teeth, say no to drugs. But we don't tell them about safety with their own bodies. That's got to stop. And that's part of what we're going to be doing at the Care Center.
Are there groups where child abuse is more prevalent than others, or is it pretty widespread among all socioeconomic strata?
It really is. Child abuse affects all races, all socioeconomical grasps. I mean, it's widespread. Some people want to, have asked me, really, why is Oklahoma such a bad state for child abuse? We rank 3rd in the nation for child abuse. It could be
3rd worst, I guess.
3rd worst,
not
yes,
3rd
sir.
best.
That's
yeah.
right.
Okay.
Unfortunately, drugs. We have the I-40, I-35 crossroads. A lot of trafficking occurs there. There's education, poverty rates. There can be a lot that can be said for the reason why we have the problems that we have in Oklahoma, but it is widespread.
All right. Well, what can our viewers do to help?
We love volunteers at the Care Center. We have volunteers that can come in and work directly with our children.
Do you give them training, I guess?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Yeah. They have, everyone receives a background check, and they receive thorough training. We've got to make sure we're putting the right people with our children. These kids need a lot of attention, and you want to give it to these kids. Sometimes I will push back from my desk and I'll go walk into the playroom and I'll just sit down and play in the floor with kids, because that's really what it's about. We love our volunteers. We need champions. You may notice I have a little lion-hearted pin right here. Mm-hmm. We have a lion-hearted society. We are mainly supported through donations, and so anyone who wants to donate or learn more about the Care Center should go to carecenter-okc.org.
You mean mostly funded by donations? Are you saying most of your funding doesn't come from government?
Let me rewind.
Okay.
Most of our funding comes from VOCA and CAMA.
And explain what that is.
And VOCA and CAMA is a state and a federal grant.
Okay.
So we receive a lot of funding through a state and federal grant. The other half of everything that we do are grants and our generous supporters.
Okay.
And is private fundraising.
We will give some website information in our final segment today, and I'm sure this show has inspired a lot of people to either get involved with their time and energy or their money. And regardless, I think it's great that you're getting out and helping to spread the word about what's taking place inside homes all throughout the state of Oklahoma, because we've got to do better.
Yes, we do.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Kent and I'll have a final word after this.
There are now 11 million of us who live here and work here. I was 15 when I came here 6 years ago. I raised my family here. I drive my truck to my job every day. The only difference between now and 6 years ago, I do it legally. I wanted to. Because this is my home.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
I really think people are so unaware of the number of kids waiting just in Oklahoma. And I think if more people knew that those children were out there waiting, I think that just by the way we live our lives and the people we talk to, that maybe we can help encourage adoption from Oklahoma.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're here wrapping up the show with Stacy McNeiland, who works at the Care Center in Oklahoma City.
Care Center is an organization that is not widely known about in the community, but does really strong, powerful work with the littlest and most harmed citizens we have, the abused and deprived kids. I have a kind of a special memory about the Care Center. It was 17 years ago last month. That a friend of mine, Don Nicholson, and I sat on the floor of the waiting area in the Care Center. We'd just been on a tour to see what kind of child abuse facilities we had in Oklahoma City, and came up with the idea about founding Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, and that's what we did. And now that organization supplies legal representation to the children that go through the Care Center and other places. So the Care Center has a long history of doing good work. Excuse me, in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and I think, Kent, your organization there is, and what Stacy's doing, it's an example of how we're doing much better for the victims.
Indeed.
But I can't validate that we're doing a whole lot on the prevention side. I mean, we're trying, and there's a lot of effort going into it. I think our successes, though, are in our care for the victims and trying to help the victims. But we've got to do a better job, and and we talk a lot about generational abuse, and we talk a lot about a child in poverty is more likely to interact with an abuser. All of those things may be true, but at the end of the day, we've just got to be more responsible, and I think draw more attention to it. She gave an example of a grandparent calling the Care Center, say, I think they might be being abused at their babysitters, whatever. That's probably a good call to make.
Yes.
Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But if that call isn't made, then we're not ever going to find out.
And they're followed up.
And they are. And so I want to give that information on the website. It's called carecenter-okc.org. That's carecenter-okc.org. We have a website too, but regardless of whether or not you visit the websites, Kent and I'll be back next week with another show. And we'll see you then.